Now while you're watching this video, please remember to like, share this video, subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon for notifications of future videos. Thank you.
Well, hello there, welcome back to my channel guys. Yes, so today I have for you yet again another exciting video, right? This video that is being recorded here, this video should actually have been posted yesterday, so this is yesterday's video that you're actually getting today, right? And as you can see, the title suggests, does God forbid women from having power and authority? Does God forbid women from ruling? Right? This is what we want to talk about. Isaiah 3 verse 12 explain. Now, this is another typical proof text that will oftentimes be used in a way to suggest that women should not have a position of authority in the church. I've seen it used several times over, and as a matter of fact, this was a scripture passage that I used myself when I had once shared the belief that women should not have authority in the church. So this is a scripture passage I know all too well, right? But God has given me light, wherein He has shown me that this is not what the scripture actually teaches. God has given me light, and I have seen that this scripture passage is in no way suggesting that at all. As you all would or can probably agree that the Bible must not contradict itself, right? So when you look at Isaiah 3 verse 12, right, it should automatically raise a number of questions in your mind just looking at it at face value, right? I'm going to read the text for you guys and then we'll talk about it. So Isaiah 3 verse 12 reads thus from the King James Version. As for my people, children are their oppressors and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. Now just looking at the text alone by itself, it seems to be referring to this in a negative sense, right? By saying that it's not proper for women to actually rule over God's people. This is how it sounds, right? And if this is the case, then that means that there is no way God would want, right, a woman to be in position of authority, whether it be to rule over God's people or to rule in the church. Ironically enough, this is an Old Testament passage, right? And if this is used, let's say this is what it's actually saying from an Old Testament standpoint. If this is still applicable in the New Testament, because we Christian teach that we are under a new covenant, you should find the same theme, right, being conveyed in the New Testament, and you do not find any such thing. I covered the two primary proof texts from the New Testament already. That is 1 Corinthians 14, I think it's verse 33 onwards to 35, and Timothy 2 verses 11 to about 15. Those are the two primary ones that people use of the New Testament, and I show you already that this is in no way suggesting that. So therefore, there is no New Testament text that actually conveys this idea. Immediately, that should put a red flag to anyone, right, who have it to say that Christian women shouldn't have authority in the church, right? But even without the New Testament, right, it should still raise a number of questions in your mind. When it is saying that children are the oppressors, women rule over them. Now, when you read this from a different translation, such as the NLT, it reads thus: childish leaders oppress my people, and women rule over them. O my people, your leaders mislead you. They send you down the wrong road. Right? This is what Isaiah is saying from the New Living Translation. It says that childish leaders oppress his people. Now, if you ask me, this is a better rendering of the text, right, than from the KJV. Here's why. the ESV says infants are the oppressors, right? But the NLT says childish leaders oppress my people. Now, in saying childish leaders, it could be immediately the first thing that should come to your mind is that it's not necessarily children, but leaders who actually act like children. This makes better sense, you know. And here's why it makes better sense. We know from the Old Testament, right, that there have been at least 2 leaders in the Old Testament that actually led God's people at a very young stage. Jehoash was 7 years old when he began to reign. And Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign. One was 7 and one was 8 when they took the throne, and this was orchestrated and ordained by God. Right? It was orchestrated and it was ordained by God to do so. Right, guys? So if this was ordained by God, one cannot say that children cannot lead God people, because the text at face value is saying that it is a bad thing for children to actually oppress, because the word oppress there, you know, right? It can also be translated, as taskmasters or exactors. The Hebrew word for oppress there means to tyrannize. So it doesn't convey the point, it doesn't convey what we are thinking in our mind at face value when it says oppress, meaning that children have gotten so disobedient, right, that they are oppressing their parents and so forth. No. The idea of oppress there, you know, based off the Hebrews, you know, it means to tyrannize, right? To lay heavy burdens and so forth. So the word oppress there means in essence to basically rule, right? That is what the Hebrew word means. It is not the oppressed that you're thinking about. It means to rule. So it is saying, the text then is saying that children or childish leaders are ruling over God's people. And the NLT is a better rendering of the text, because the KJV can't be at the appropriate rendering of the text, because it would be suggesting that children cannot rule over God's people. And we know that children rule over God's people, and God ordained it so. Right? So the fact that God ordained it so, the New Living Translation is a better rendering of the text by saying that childish, right? By saying that childish leaders oppress my people, or childish leaders rule over my people, right? And not that children are ruling over God's people, which would suggest in one's mind that it is a wrong thing to have children ruling over God's people. No, that's not what the text is saying. The text is saying childish leaders rule over God's people. You can be sure, right, that those 2 kings that was mentioned, primarily Josiah, right? They never acted like children. If God called you as a child, right, to basically do a work for him, surely he's going to equip you and give you wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, so you won't act like a child in carrying out God's work. So children can indeed fulfill any mandate of God. So the text is in no way saying that children cannot assume certain offices if God appoints them. Matter of fact, God did say to Jeremiah, when Jeremiah was saying that he was only a child, that say not that you are a child. Right? So the text is not saying that children cannot assume certain offices, right, if God calls them to it. What the text also isn't saying is that women cannot rule over God's people. How do I know this? A case in point, Deborah. We know that Deborah was basically a judge in Israel. You find that in Judges 4 and Judges 5. Right? And Deborah did lead. Right? She helped through her aid. God's people was delivered during her time from those that were oppressing them. So Deborah was in a position of leadership, and God called her to do it. If it was a wrong thing to do, wouldn't you think that it would be contradictory, right, for God to know, say that it's a bad thing that women are ruling over God's people, when he, at one point in time, did use a woman to basically take charge over his people, to lead over them, to rule them for a period of time, and by her work, she led them out of the hands of their oppressors. Right? Esther was ordained. Through her, God raised her and elevated her to a status of queen. That's a position of authority. So we are finding that from the Old Testament standpoint, God doesn't have a problem with women actually leading and being in a position of authority. Once they can do the work and they are competent, God will use them even to rule once they are competent. From an Old Testament standpoint, this is what we actually see. So the text is in no way saying that. Right? But let me go a bit deeper in the text for you guys. Why then does it say from the KJV, as for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them? The word for woman can also be translated as wife. Right? Now, reading from the J. Gill's commentary, this is how J. Gill's commentary put Isaiah 3 verse 12. As for my people, children are their oppressors or rulers. So he's looking at oppressors as rulers, just as I said to you a while ago. As for my people, children are oppressors or rulers. In the Ethiopic language, signifies a king or exactors, as in Isaiah 60 verse 17. Princes are so called because they exact tributes of their subjects, and sometimes in a tyrannical and oppressive manner, and so get the name of oppressors. The sense is the same in Isaiah 3 verse 4, right? That babes shall rule over them, right? Or childish leaders shall rule over them, right? So Jake is saying that the sense is the same with Isaiah 3 verse 4. The words may be rendered, as for my people, every one of their governors is a child. Right? Not in age, but in understanding. And this is why the New Living Translation says childish leaders. Right? Childish leaders oppress my people. So Jake is saying when it's talking about children, it's talking in understanding, but not in age, because God doesn't have a problem with a child leading, right? He has a problem if you think like a child while you're in a position of leadership. This is the problem that God has, and this is what is being conveyed in Isaiah 3 verse 12. Childish leaders, right, oppress my people, right? And that women rule over them. Now, here's what J.K. has to say on that part. Either over the people of Israel, as Alexandra before Either over the people of Israel as Alexandra before Hyrcanus. I'm not sure if I pronounce that right, guys. And Helena, queen of Adia Beniz, are over the child, their governor. Right? As women had great influence over their husbands, the governors of Judea in those times, as Herodias, Bernice, and Drusilla, or it may be understood of men, weak, effeminate, and given to pleasure. So this is how J. Gills is put it. He's telling you what the text could actually mean. As in wives ruling over those childish leaders. Women, their wives ruling over those childish women, because he pointed out some notable women, right, that had influence over their husband. And we see time and time again, even Jezebel, right, had influence over her husband. Right? Remember Jezebel, that wicked woman who is even talked about in Revelation. She too had influence over her husband. So it was a common thing in those days for women to actually have those influence over their husband. Trust me, guys. It's not now. Women is basically controlling the minds of men, and leading them down to wrong paths, We find that with basically Adam, and it's a growing trend from the days of Adam up until now, where women actually influence men for bad. Women actually can have influence over men, as a matter of fact, they should have some influence over their husband, right? They should influence them for good and not evil. But oftentimes, we find where women actually influence men for bad. And this is a lesson. If you're a man listening to this, that you need to be careful of the kind of woman that you have, that you choose to take on to yourself, because women can influence you for good and they can influence you for bad. We see it happen time and time again. So the text is telling you that women rule over those childish men, are those childish leaders. So it is not saying that women, can't lead over in a position of leadership, But it becomes a problem when women rule over their husband, right? Those childish oppressors, right? That women rule over. This is how J. Gills is actually putting it. And this is what God is talking about. This is what is putting in a negative connotation. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of the paths. So those people who lead you, they cause you to err. Why? They are childish in their thinking, and they allow their women or their wives to rule over them. They are weak, right? They don't possess any balls to stand up to their woman, and basically, because by right, man is the head of the household. So no woman supposed to be so controlling your actions that you as a man, you can't say to her, hey honey, this is not how it's going to be done. This is not to say that you shouldn't listen to your woman, or she don't have a voice, But you shouldn't be so weak that at everything that you want, you're a yes man to your wife, then so to speak. You can't tell her, no honey, this is not how we are going to do it. You can't exercise your masculine energy when you should actually have the possess authority over your wife, and your wife should be submissive to you. It's actually the other way around, where you're submissive to her, and whatever she says, that is what actually goes. This is the problem that God is talking about. This is what he's saying, that leaders like these cause my people to err. The text make far more sense, right? Because I'm sure, like myself, when you read it, you were thinking in your mind that it's saying that women cannot rule. No, this is not what it is saying. And you see, just like that, guys, I'm sure you can agree that I actually balance the scriptures. You see how it makes sense now? No, the scriptures is not contradicting itself, because you saw where women were actually in position of authority. You saw where children was in position of authority. So you see that Isaiah is not saying that it is a bad thing for children to be in position of authority or for women to be in position of authority. What's bad, right, is when a man in position of authority and he thinks like a child, right? What's bad is that a child is in a position of authority and they come with their childish mentality. That's a problem. But if that child can come with a mature mentality in leading, he can do the job, God will use them. If God called that child to do a work, even if they're childish, God will make them mature in thinking. If God call a woman to do a particular work, whether to lead or rule in something, God will give her the strength, the wisdom and knowledge to do it. So she can be in a position of authority and exercise authority, so long as that authority is not being exercised over her husband. And so this is the explanation of Isaiah 3 verse 12. I had wanted to look at the text contextually from verse 1 to 12 for you, but you can read it for yourself with the understanding that I gave to you in Isaiah 3 verse 12. You can read from verse 1 onwards at your own leisure, and you will see that it will perfectly synchronize. I chose not to do it now, even though that's what I normally would, but I'm trying to control the length of this video, so that is why I never did it. And I don't think I had to. I think I could just concentrate on the verse alone, right, based off what we know already that the scripture reveals. So with that being said, I end this video, guys. You know what to do now. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Bye bye now.